The past is a chrome mirror that eventually reflects the truth you've been trying to hide from the world. Experience the sharp edge of a final reckoning, where every choice is weighed and every debt is paid in full. Click subscribe now and witness the ultimate moment of truth.
The envelope was still on my kitchen table when I made my coffee that morning. I hadn't moved it. I just kept looking at it, while the pot gurgled and the early light came through the window above the sink. 63 years old, and I was standing in my own kitchen feeling like a fool. My son had called the night before, not to check on me, not to ask how my knee was doing after the surgery. He called because he needed something. He always called because he needed something. "Dad, we can't do the cruise this year," he said. "Things are tight. The transmission on Sarah's car finally gave out, and we're looking at close to $4,000 to fix it. I just wanted you to know we won't be making it to your birthday dinner either. I'm sorry." I told him not to worry about it. I told him I understood. Then I went to my desk, opened my laptop, and transferred $4,000 into his account before I even changed out of my pajamas. That was 11 days ago. I retired from 31 years in civil engineering 2 years back. My wife, Carol, passed 4 years before that. Pancreatic cancer. 18 months from diagnosis to the end. I spent those 18 months next to her. And when it was over, I spent the next 2 years figuring out who I was without her. We had 2 children together. My son, who I'll call by what his mother always called him, the name she'd chosen before he was even born, and my daughter, who lives in Portland and calls me every Sunday without fail, even when she's busy, even when there's nothing to say. She just calls, because she thinks I might be lonely. She's right, but I never tell her that. My son is 41. He has a good job in sales. His wife, Sarah, works in marketing. They own a home in Scottsdale. They have 2 cars, a dog, and a timeshare they bought 3 years ago without asking me whether that was wise. They are not struggling. They have never really struggled. And yet, in the 7 years since they got married, I have given them more money than I care to add up. I started keeping a list about 14 months ago, after my accountant, a sharp woman named Miriam who does not sugarcoat things, asked me why my discretionary transfers had gone up so significantly over the past few years. I didn't have a clean answer for her, so I went home and I wrote it all down. First it was the wedding. Carol and I paid for most of it, which we were glad to do. That one I don't count. Then it was the down payment on the house, because the market was moving fast and they were $5,000 short. Then it was the medical bills when my son had his appendix out and their insurance left a gap. Then it was the backyard renovation, which I was told was necessary because the deck was a safety hazard. Then it was a loan, officially a loan, with a handshake and a promise of repayment for the kitchen remodel. That loan was never mentioned again after the check cleared. Then it was Christmas one year, when they'd overspent and needed to cover the credit card balance before the interest hit. Then Sarah's car. Then a trip to Mexico they said was a work conference but which showed up later in a photo album on my daughter's Facebook as a beach vacation. I don't tell you all this to make my son look like a monster. He is my son. I love him the way you love someone you watched come into this world, someone whose first steps you caught on a video camera you still have in a box somewhere. But somewhere between raising him and letting him go, something went wrong. Or maybe something went wrong in me. Maybe I made it too easy for too long, and by the time I understood what I'd built, it was already load-bearing. The transmission story came in October. By November, I had recovered from my knee surgery well enough to drive, and I was feeling more like myself, taking walks in the morning, cooking actual meals instead of heating things up, making plans. I had signed up for a photography class at the community center, mostly because Miriam had been after me to find something social, and partly because Carol had always wanted me to slow down and notice things. The class was on Tuesday afternoons. I was looking forward to it. My son called on a Thursday evening. He said Sarah's mother was having some health issues, nothing critical, just age-related things that required more attention, and they were thinking of going up to see her in Idaho in December. Did I have any travel points I wasn't using? I'd mentioned once that I had a significant number of airline miles accumulated from years of work travel that I'd never cashed in. I said I'd look into it. The next morning I opened my miles account for the first time in about a year. I had enough for 4 round-trip tickets to almost anywhere domestic. I was in the middle of calculating what it would take to transfer them when my daughter called for our Sunday check-in. We talked for a while about her work, about her cat who had recently developed an expensive opinion about which brand of food he would and would not eat, about the rain in Portland. Then, almost as an aside, she said, "Did you see the pictures Marcus posted? From the cruise?" I set down my coffee cup. "What pictures?" I said. She went quiet for just a moment. That particular silence of someone who has realized they've said something they shouldn't have. "I figured you knew," she said carefully. "They were on Instagram. They tagged the cruise line." "I saw it last week. I told her I'd look at it." I kept my voice even. We finished the call. I am not on Instagram. I had to ask my neighbor's teenage grandson to show me how to look at a public profile without an account. He was very patient about it. Within 4 minutes, I was looking at 17 photographs of my son and his wife on the deck of a large cruise ship somewhere in the Caribbean. There was a photo of them at a formal dinner. There was a photo of Sarah in a swimsuit by a pool with a drink in her hand. There was a photo of my son in a white linen shirt, grinning at the camera with his arm around her. The ocean spread out behind them, and the caption, "Finally took the trip we've been dreaming about. Life is short. Live it." The timestamp on the first photo was 6 days after he told me they couldn't afford the cruise. The timestamp on the transfer confirmation in my bank account was 3 days before that first photo. I did not call him. I want to be clear about that. The version of me that might have called the one who would have demanded an explanation, who would have raised his voice and said things that couldn't be unsaid, that man did something different. He went to his desk. He opened a spreadsheet. He started adding things up. I am an engineer by trade and by temperament. When something doesn't hold together structurally, my instinct is not to knock it down. My instinct is to understand exactly where the failure is, document it, and then decide what to do with that information. Carol used to say, "I processed grief like I processed blueprints." She meant it as gentle criticism. I took it as a compliment. Over the following 2 weeks, I put together a clear picture of what the last 7 years had looked like. The total number was higher than I'd thought, not ruinous. I'm careful with money. Always have been, but significant. Significant enough that Miriam, when I showed it to her, sat back in her chair and was quiet for a long moment before she said anything. "Have you talked to an estate attorney?" she asked. I told her I had an appointment the following Tuesday. I had made that appointment before I even finished the spreadsheet. There is something clarifying about sitting across from a professional and describing a situation out loud. The attorney, a methodical man in his late 50s who had clearly heard versions of this story before, listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked a few precise questions. He pulled out a legal pad and made notes. Then he explained my options to me in plain language, which I appreciated. He told me that what I had given over the years was given. Transfers without formal loan agreements, particularly ones this old, were effectively gifts. I could not reclaim them. That wasn't why I was there. And I told him so. What I wanted was different. I wanted my estate organized in a way that reflected reality, not assumption. My son had been assuming I could see that clearly now, that because I had always given, I would always give, and that whatever was left when I was gone would pass to him as a matter of course. That assumption had shaped his behavior. He had borrowed against a future he hadn't earned, and a generosity he had mistaken for obligation. I wanted to correct that misunderstanding. Not out of anger, out of accuracy. The attorney and I spent 2 hours that Tuesday afternoon. Then I went to the photography class. I was 40 minutes late. The instructor, a patient woman named Donna, handed me a camera and showed me how to adjust for light without a word about the time. My son called in late November. He asked if I'd looked into the airline miles. I said I had. He said he and Sarah had been thinking about it. And actually, they were wondering if, instead of the miles, which could be complicated to transfer, I might just cover the flights directly. It would be easier. Also, while he had me on the phone, he wanted to mention that they were thinking about refinancing the house. The equity had built up nicely. They were considering pulling some of it out to renovate the master bathroom and possibly add a room. Not a big project. Maybe $80,000. They were wondering if I might want to be involved. I asked him what be involved meant. He said it would be more of a gift than a loan. Since repaying the kitchen remodel had been tough, he acknowledged this was overdue. He thought it would be cleaner to structure future help differently. I told him that sounded like a conversation worth having in person. Would he and Sarah come for Christmas? He said yes. Of course. Absolutely. My daughter came 2 days before Christmas. She helped me with the tree, which I hadn't put up since Carol died. We ordered Thai food and watched old movies, and she didn't mention the cruise, and neither did I. On Christmas Eve, she made the green bean casserole that her mother used to make, following the handwritten recipe card that's been in the same drawer since 1987, and I stood in the doorway of my kitchen and watched her work and felt something I don't have a precise word for, something close to gratitude, and close to grief, and close to peace, all at once. My son and Sarah arrived on Christmas morning. They were warm, easy, full of holiday energy. Sarah had brought a poinsettia. My son hugged me and said I looked good, that the knee recovery had clearly done me well. We opened gifts. We had a good meal. My daughter kept things light in the way she always does. On the surface, it was a pleasant Christmas. After dinner, while Sarah and my daughter were doing the dishes, insisting I sit down, my son settled into the armchair across from me with his second glass of wine and said, "So, Dad, have you given any thought to what we talked about?" I nodded. I told him I had thought about it quite a bit. I stood up, went to my desk in the study just off the living room, and came back with a manila envelope. I sat back down. I held it for a moment. My son was watching me with an expression I recognized, the slightly too casual look of someone who is trying not to appear as eager as they are. I handed him the envelope. He took it and looked at the front, which was plain and had nothing written on it. He set down his wine glass. He opened the flap and pulled out the papers inside. I watched his face as he read. The first page was a letter from my attorney, written in clean legal language, summarizing a meeting and a series of decisions I had made regarding my estate. My son's eyes moved across the lines. I saw him get to the part about the revised distribution. I saw him get to the part about the charitable trust. I saw him get to the numbers. His face did something complicated. The easy holiday warmth drained out of it. His jaw tightened. He turned to the second page, which was the spreadsheet all 7 years. Every transfer, every date and amount, organized into clean rows. At the bottom of that page, I had added a single handwritten note. Not cruel. Not long. Just the thing I needed to say. This is what love looked like for the last 7 years. It will still look like love. It just won't look like money anymore. He put the papers down on his knee. He didn't say anything for a long time. The sound of his wife and his sister laughing about something in the kitchen came through the wall. Finally, he looked up at me. "Dad, I'm not angry with you," I said. And I meant it. I'm not punishing you. I'm getting honest with you, which is something I should have done a long time ago. "This is because of the cruise," he said. "The cruise is on the list," I said. "The cruise is one item." He looked back at the spreadsheet. I watched him doing the math. "I was going to pay back the kitchen thing. I always meant to." "I know," I said. "I believe that you believed that." He sat with that for a moment. "The trust," he said. "The percentages can change," I said. "They're not carved in stone. An estate plan reflects the present. The present can change." He was quiet again. Then, in a voice that was smaller than the voice he'd used all day, quieter than the holiday version of my son, he said, "I didn't think you noticed." "I know," I said. "My daughter left on the 27th. Before she got in the car, she hugged me for a long time and said, without any context, 'I think you handled it right, Dad.' I don't know exactly what she knew or how much she'd pieced together. I didn't ask. My son and I have spoken 3 times since Christmas. The conversations are different now. There is less performance in them. He called once just to tell me about something that had happened at work, not to ask for anything, just to talk. That call lasted 40 minutes. It was the longest we had talked without money being part of the subtext in longer than I can remember. Sarah sent me a card in January. Handwritten. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't realized how one-sided things had gotten. She said she hoped we could start fresh. I put the card in the same drawer as Carol's recipe. I don't know how this ends. I'm 63, not a philosopher. I'm an engineer. I know that structures fail when the load is distributed wrong, when one point bears more than it was designed to carry. I know that the fix isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just redistribution. Sometimes it's just getting honest about what's holding what. The photography class has been going well. Donna says I have a good eye for light. I've been taking pictures of ordinary things, my coffee cup in the morning, the shadows the blinds make on the kitchen floor, the way the desert looks in January when everything is brown and still and waiting. Carol would have liked the pictures. She always said I didn't notice things enough. She would have been right about a lot of things if she'd had more time. The envelope is gone from my kitchen table. My son has his copy. My attorney has his copy. I have mine, filed where I keep important things, next to the deed to the house and the video camera with my son's first steps still on the tape inside. Some things you keep because they remind you what love was. Before it got complicated, before it got confused with obligation, with assumption, with the quiet arithmetic of people taking more than they give and telling themselves they'll make it right eventually. I kept all of it. I keep all of it still, but I am done paying for a version of my son that doesn't exist. I am waiting, patiently, for the one that does.